Welcome into the Fantasy Football Diagnostics Podcast, where we provide you with your weekly diagnosis of everything fantasy football, whether it's season-long leagues, dynasty, DFS, or sometimes even IDP. We got you covered all year long. Next guest is one of the coolest down-to-earth people that exist in fantasy football Twitter. He's all about his family, spreading positivity, and helping people out with fantasy leagues. He helping people even be better commissioners as well. Known on Twitter as Commissioner Breeze. Breeze, welcome to the show, man, and thank you for coming on, brother.
Hey, John, I'm glad to be here with you, man. It's been a long time coming. I'm glad to finally have this moment with you to talk some football.
Yeah, man, absolutely, brother. Definitely looking forward to it. I know you were one of the first people that I had really connected with on Twitter, and you were actually very active, and you put out a lot of polls, and you always put out these questions, particularly like, hey, what would you do in this situation, or who's this player that player A, player B type things. And so I always thought that was really cool, and it was one of the ways that I got to interact with people. So I always appreciated that. But the reason we're here today, Breeze, is to talk about your Detroit Lions. And so I know it could be a sore subject, but times are potentially looking up here. Had to move on from Matt Patricia, who was somehow allowed to coach a third season for the Detroit Lions last year in 2020. Went pretty much as many of us would have expected, though. 5-11, was fired during the season. The Lions end up going a major facelift in the offseason, replacing Patricia with new head coach Dan Campbell, hiring new general manager and Brad Holmes. And then these two changes, not really all that surprising, but there was one decision, which was the one to trade quarterback Matthew Stafford to the LA Rams for 2 future first-round picks and former LA Rams quarterback Jared Goff. So it's been quite the offseason for the Lions and the fans, but they were able to select Penei Sewell with the 7th overall pick. So not all things are bad. Breeze, what are the vibes around Detroit and the Lions right now?
I mean, anytime you can get a breath of fresh air from a situation that wasn't all that bright, that's good vibes in itself right there. From the moment Dan Campbell had his introductory press conference talking about biting kneecaps, that kind of had a lot of the fan base's attention right there, myself included. So, of course, around the country, everybody's going to have their own interpretation of exactly what that means. But at the end of the day, I believe the message that Dan Campbell wants to implement with the players and for the fans of the Detroit Lions is that when you see this team on the field, you're going to see a team that's going to put forth its very best effort each and every game. And the coaching staff that Dan Campbell has assembled, I'm really excited about how all this is going to translate to the field once the season starts. So it's plenty of reasons to be optimistic. Like I said, especially when you have players who buys into what the coach is saying. That's the key component right there. If you get the players on your side, the sky's the limit. A lot of people think, we'll probably be a bottom 5 offense, a bottom 5 team, but NFL, unlike any other sport, the yearly changeover is drastic. Anything can happen. So I kind of have that mindset, as regards to the vibes around the city of Detroit right now. Anything can happen.
Yeah, I mean, definitely the perspective to have, especially if you're a fan of the team. So, it's interesting with Dan Campbell, like you said, a lot of people reacted negatively to his comments. I didn't care as much, man, honestly, right? Like Dan Campbell, former player, he's from a different era. Uh, it was more about like the mentality, the toughness that you were alluding to before. So I'm not really concerned with all that. Like let's let the play do the talking. Because like you said, we could say all we want in off-season prognostication. Like myself included, I've said some negative things about the Detroit Lions, but anything can happen at the beginning of the season. Everybody's 0-0, so we're going to see what happens, and a lot of that is going to have to do with what happens with this next guy in Jared Goff, because, like I said, he gets traded from LA to Detroit in his final season with the Rams. It wasn't all that impressive. Did complete 67% of his passes for just 4,000 yards, or just over 4,000 yards, but in 15 starts, but only mustered 20 touchdowns to 13 interceptions. Did also add 4 rushing touchdowns, but if you know anything about Jared Goff, that's what we're going to call the outlier year for him. He was the quarterback 21 in fantasy points per game at just over 16 points. Going off the board, Breeze as the quarterback 31. Is there any reason to think that Goff should produce from a fantasy perspective this year?
Honestly, man, if you are in a single quarterback league, he should be off your radar. I mean, the upside is just not there. I mean, maybe, if you need somebody to stream during a bye week or 1 week fill in, that's fine. But like a single quarterback league, he's off my radar. But in a super flex, I'm okay with taking him as my RB3 because, quarterbacks is just as important as running backs in that format. So you need the depth, in case one of your quarterbacks happen to go down, you can have somebody you can plug and play. But as regards to Jared Goff, in real life, he said in his press conference that, he playing with a chip on his shoulder. So I want to see the actions behind that when they take the field come week 1. Everybody's in training camp saying he's looking really good. And one thing that I do believe that the coaching staff will do is work to his strength. They didn't take a quarterback in the draft. So that right there in itself showed they had confidence and believe in Jared Goff, the player. Then you grab the big boy Penei Sewell from Oregon at number 7, to help beef up that line, which will be one of the bright spots for the Lions this year. That offensive line, if it all come together like many are hoping and anticipating, it's gonna be a thing of beauty to watch to keep Jared Goff upright. So he'll have his moments where he'll have some decent games. I will say this though, week 7 at Los Angeles, that's a game that I expect Jared Goff to put up some good numbers. Because that's you got to imagine with the way things went down, how the team gave up on him, and he got shipped out to Detroit. That's on the back of his mind. He probably got week 7 circled on his calendar on the schedule. So that week in particular, I think he'll have one of his better games of the year. But overall, though, I think I think Jared Goff would be okay. He'll be serviceable for the team. Like I said, I'm not expecting nothing outrageous or some type of outlier of a season as far as numbers go. I think he'll just be solid from week to week.
Yeah, I think I'm definitely with you on this one, right? If you're in a one quarterback league, there's no reason to draft Jared Goff, no reason to really roster him. He's more in streaming consideration on a week to week basis. But in 2 quarterback leagues, you got to have Jared Goff on your radar, just because, again, like you said, the quarterback becomes just as valuable as the running back, and injuries can happen, suspensions, COVID. There's so many things that could happen that just, to let a guy like Jared Goff, just to pass on him because he's Jared Goff, right? Superflex kind of makes you talk yourself into these things like, oh, well, the Lions defense will still be bad and Jared Goff might have to throw some more. And so, there's going to be a lot of volume there, right? So like there's these times that you might talk yourself into these things. But something that I find myself trying to talk myself maybe out of, I'm not really sure, but DeAndre Swift, man, this guy is a talented second-year player, showed out in year 1, 878 yards from scrimmage to go along with 10 total touchdowns, had over 500 rushing yards to go along with more than 350 receiving yards on 46 receptions, dealt with some injuries, in his rookie year, but it was evident from the very beginning that he was probably their most talented weapon at different points last year, especially with Kenny Galladay out for most of the season. Finished as the RB17 in PPR points per game at 14.6. Going off the board is the RB15. Breeze, how are you feeling about this price on Swift, man?
In regards to EPR formats, I'm okay with it. I mean, I'll try to stay objective here, but as many people know who follow me on Twitter, I'm a big Swift fan because he played for the Lions, but I also like Swift, the talent. He is a very talented player, like you said. Um, with the situation that's in front of him for 2021, with all those vacated targets available to the team, he could sneak, RB10, RB11, on the season. I think he'll catch at least, upward of 60 to 65 balls. Because it's a lot of vacated targets available. I think he'll definitely thrive in the passing game. He may lose some rushing work to Jamal Williams since he's the new addition to the team. But I think overall, though, the RB15 price tag, I think it's fair. I don't think it's too high or too low. I think it's right where it's supposed to be.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge DeAndre Swift fan. I think going into last year, he was probably, I think he was my fourth running back if you were going into if you looked at rookies. But then I really watched this guy in the NFL, and I watched how he was used as a rookie. I mean, he had over 50 targets, which he turned into 57 targets, which he turned into 46 receptions. Like you said, I think he's going to be utilized in the pass game. I think 50, 60 receptions, definitely in the range of outcomes. And for me, you just have to look no further than, you know, um, Austin Eckler, right? I mean, and you have Anthony Lynn coming in. He was the former Chargers coach. He has a history not just with Austin Eckler, but LaShawn McCoy as well. Both of these guys caught a ton of passes. They were utilized in the pass game, especially when you consider the more in LaShawn McCoy's case that there were no other pass weapons around him. So they had no choice. And if you look at DeAndre Swift, that was kind of the situation last year. At points, it was just him, TJ Hawkinson, and a 30-something-year-old Marvin Jones. So, I think that ultimately DeAndre Swift will end up second on this team, most likely in targets. And that's valuable, especially in PPR leagues, like you said. And then the other thing to note is he's a guy that he was utilized around the goal line a lot last year, and so I don't think that goes away. So, yeah, I'm very interested in DeAndre Swift, especially at the RB15 price tag. I have him inside my top 12 at RB11, and that was after I moved him down. So, it's definitely going to be interesting to see. Like you said, I think Jamal Williams and Jamar Jefferson potentially even get involved in first and second down work, but that pass game has got to belong to Swift.
And before we move on to, I want to throw this quick stat out here that I thought was very interesting. Since 1990, there were only two running backs who have had at least 45 receptions and a minimum of 14 games played, and they were Le'Veon Bell and DeAndre Swift. End of list.
Yeah, no, and that's a phenomenal stat because that just kind of shows you the impact that he had in his rookie year. And so when you look at again potentially the impact he could have in his second in this next year, you can only be excited, man. Really. All right, let's move on to a position that's a little less exciting, and that is the wide receiver position. And honestly, man, I don't have anything interesting to say about any of these guys outside of maybe Amon-Ra St. Brown. So don't have a whole lot else to say. I personally am not interested in Tyrell Williams or Rashad Perriman. Honestly, I find myself more about Quintez Cephas, who seems to get no love from the fantasy community. But Breeze St. Brown is the wide receiver 67, Tyrell Williams, the wide receiver 73. and Perriman, the wide receiver, 75. And then Quintez Cephas, who, according to the multi-site ADP that I use from 4for4.com, he's not even on the radar for fantasy players. So which of these guys do you want, Breeze?
I mean, you just alluded to it a moment ago. The guy who, if I had to choose a guy from the Lions receiving core that I would take a chance on, it would be Quintez Cephas, just because of the simple fact that, after this upcoming season, it's only going to be him and Amon-Ra St. Brown on the roster. Tyrell Williams and Brashad Perriman only got signed a 1-year deal. So, if I'm in a dynasty league, Quintez Cephas is somebody that I'm looking to pick up because I want to see his development as he enters into year 2, albeit under a new system, a new coaching staff, a new quarterback. I want to see what steps that he has made to become a better receiver from his rookie year to his sophomore season. And the opportunity should be there for him to get more reps because, Kenny Galladay and Marvin Jones, they're gone. So that's a lot of targets that's up for grabs at the wide receiver position.
Yeah, I'm totally with you, brother. Because Quintez Cephas, I mean, he's the guy that was kind of on my radar a little bit last year. He was a pretty good wide receiver prospect. He slipped in the draft. I think he fell to was it the 5th round or the 7th? It was somewhere between the 5th and the 7th round. If I could find it. So, 5th round. He was a 5th round pick, 166 overall to the Detroit Lions, and he slipped because he ran a poor 40, 4.73 at 6'1", 202 pounds. Still had a 38.5-inch vert, so that still shows some explosion there. That 40 time doesn't really match that vert at that size for me. So 4.73. I don't really care all that much because this was a guy that still averaged 17 and a half yards per reception last year as a rookie on 35 targets. And he caught 57% of those passes, right? To average 17 and a half yards per catch, have a 57% catch rate. I think that's pretty impressive when your ADOT is 14 and a half yards. So he profiles as the deep threat. I know Tyrell Williams and Brashad Perriman have that history and maybe have that speed that you look for in these deep threats. But Quintez Cephas, this was a guy that was a good player in college. Again, slips in the draft because of a poor 40 time, but has an opportunity here to be the number 1 target here with Jared Goff and an offense where you're probably expecting them to throw a decent amount because, again, as I said before, the defense is not expected to be all that great.
Okay.
All right, let's move on to the tight end position, Breeze. And that's, I think, the easiest thing to talk about here with the Detroit Lions. It's the least amount of questions, I think, because you have TJ Hawkinson, who turned out to be a value in 2020 after managers kind of had a bad taste in their mouth from burning all that fab and waiver priority after week 1 of his rookie year, but came on strong in year 2, was 5th at the position in total PPR points, averaging 11 PPR points per game, was 10th at the position in target share with 18% on the season, was 5th in total targets, though, with 101 targets at the position, 67 receptions, 723 yards last year to go along with 6 touchdown receptions. We all assume that Hawk will be the primary pass catcher here for the Lions in 2021, as evidenced by his tight end 6 price and his 5th round ADP in 12-team leagues. Breeze, what are your thoughts on the price of Hawk here?
Him being the tight end 6, that is too low for the opportunity that he is about to walk into. I mean, think about a couple years ago before people discovered who Darren Waller was, the situation that he walked into. There was nobody, as far as wide receivers goes, on the Raiders who was going to threaten him for getting targets. So now you got a similar situation with TJ Hawkinson, with Kenny Galladay and Marvin Jones out the picture, and you got these receivers that's here now. They're, okay, not world beaters, but the point here is that you know, when you want to hit on a breakout tight end, you want to look for a couple things. You know, you want to look at where is he at in his progression as a tight end, because usually take 3 years for a tight end to really break out, because it's one of the harder positions to learn in the NFL. So that's checkbox number one right there. But checkbox number two, and most importantly, is that the targets are going to be there for TJ Hockenson. You know, he had 101 targets last year. I don't think it'd be far fetched to say he can get 130, 135 targets on a year and really, really break out. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he reached 1,000 yards receiving on the year for 2021 and truly break out and enter that elite tier with the, Travis Kelce's, the Darren Waller, George Kittles of the world. And yeah, man, I mean, I'm personally really excited about TJ Hockenson going into 2021. And you got a quarterback in Jared Goff who loves to throw the ball to the tight end. So it's like, what more can you ask for when you're trying to get a tight end that you're okay playing, because we know how volatile the tight end position is week in and week out. And that fifth round um, price tag, I'm okay with it. I mean, you won't find another tight end outside of the big three with the situation that TJ Hockenson is walking into for 2021. So I'm okay with the price on TJ Hockenson there.
Yeah, I mean, at this point in the draft, right? You're looking at tight end, and I think you have to get one of these top six guys, right? No matter how you have them ordered: Travis Kelce, George Kittle, Kyle Pitts, Darren Waller, Mark Andrews, T.J. Hockenson. However you have them ordered, you have to have you have to be able to get one of these six guys, or you're waiting on the position, in my opinion, and taking dart throws. But TJ Hawkinson, like you said, I think, yeah, 100, 120, 130 targets, definitely in the range of outcomes for TJ Hawkinson. I don't see any reason why there's no other real threat on this offense from a receiving perspective. I mean, we've talked about that. So TJ Hawkinson definitely should be on your radar. And he was a high first round pick, so he's got some capital invested in him, and he's done well through 2 seasons, right? I talked about this last year in regards to him entering his second year, but a lot of people had this bad taste in their mouth for TJ Hawkinson, but he had like an okay rookie season. It's not like he had a terrible rookie season. He had 367 receiving yards as a rookie, and uh, sorry, he had 367 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns, right, as a rookie tight end. That's not really terrible. That's pretty much what the average rookie tight end does, especially the average first round rookie tight end typically does. But there was this huge disappointment because he had the huge week 1 game where he had over 100 yards receiving. And so everybody had these huge expectations for him after that. But I think he's, like you said, his progression, his trajectory, definitely on his way to being one of the elite tight ends.
Absolutely. And people tend to forget that, like you alluded to a moment ago about that week 1, he got that upside in him to put up a 9 for 131 at one on any given week. It might be a little bit more commonplace going into 2021 because of, like I said before, the opportunity and the situation that he's about to walk into.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, Breeze, man, this has been awesome, brother. But before I let you go, I gotta ask you one last question. Um, how do you see this division breaking down, and where do you see the Detroit Lions finishing?
That's a great question because, we got this Aaron Rodgers situation kind of clouding over the division right now. Obviously, if he happens to come back to Green Bay, they'll probably be favored and my pick to win the division. But if he's, for whatever reason, retire or hold out for an extended period of time, all of a sudden the division becomes wide open. And at that point, like I said at the beginning of anything can happen. It wouldn't surprise me, if Minnesota, make that jump and kind of take back over the division, because they made some solid moves this offseason, or even the Chicago Bears, with Justin Fields and how that old quarterback situation out there. But as far as the Lions' outlook, if they could win maybe 6 or 7 games this year, I would call that a successful season, considering that we are in a rebuild slash retool right now. I know Vegas, I think, had us at like maybe 4 to 5 wins. So we kind of playing with house money going into the season. So that's my outlook for Detroit. And like I said, 6 or 7 wins, I'll be pretty happy. That'll give us something to build on and look forward to for 2022.
Yeah, man, definitely. I'm definitely with you on how you have it breaking down. The whole Aaron Rodgers thing definitely in flux, but it'll be a two-horse race. If Aaron Rodgers is not a Green Bay, it'll be two-horse race between those the Vikings and the Chicago Bears, and then you'll have the Viking or the Lions hoping to play spoiler for either of those two teams, or maybe even all three of them. So we'll see. But you know what? Like you said, the Lions, they're definitely building it the right way. Both sides of the trenches, offensive and defensive line. That's where most of their draft picks ended up going to, starting with the left tackle and Penei Sewell. So definitely good things coming ahead for your Detroit Lions. So excited about that. Breeze, thank you for this so much, brother. Where can everybody find you? Where can they check out whatever it is that you're doing these days, and how can they get a hold of you, man?
Sure. You all can follow me on Twitter at MCBreeze11. That is typically where I will post any content relating to football or, at this point, it's playoff basketball, wrestling, whatever the case may be. That's where you can find me. And right now, it's pretty much in the heart of redraft season. So I'm kind of grinding right now as far as my leagues, just to ensure that uh, there's another successful year in my league members and my league mates having the awesome fantasy football experience. So that's pretty much what I care about, that more so than winning the league. Honestly, at this point, I've been running leagues for 10 years now. So my perspective in that regard has kind of changed. But don't hear me when I'm not saying that I don't like to win, because I do, but that's kind of where I'm at. I'm commissioner first place.
Nah, man, I definitely understand it. I'm a commissioner for a few of my leagues as well, including our league of record here on the Fantasy Football Diagnostics podcast, the League of Extraordinary People. So, yeah, it can get stressful at times, and so you've been doing it for 10 years, and like you said, you have multiple leagues that you're commissioning. Definitely understand how stressful that could get, brother. So look, man, appreciate you, man. Appreciate you taking the time to come join us tonight. And everybody, make sure you check Breeze out uh, on Twitter, and make sure that you're following him and you're checking out all his everything he's got going on over there. And if you got questions about leagues, you got questions about league settings, make sure you hit my man up. All right, everybody, thank you, appreciate you. Have a good one, and we'll talk to y'all next week when we go over the NFC South. Peace, y'all.